Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. Our very special guest is Bill Thompson, former City Comptroller of New York City. He also ran against Mayor Bloomberg for the office of mayor, and he came close.
Very close.
Mr. Thompson, welcome to the show.
Greg, it's a pleasure seeing you. It's good being with you today.
Thank you. And before we begin, I just want to ask you a question about your former position as Comptroller.
Mm-hmm.
There is a proposal by our newly elected, well, he's been in the job for a couple of years, New York City Comptroller, Mr. John Liu.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot has been said about that proposal, but while I have you here, I'd like to get your take on that proposal. We're talking about the proposal to merge all 5 New York City pension boards under one investment board.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've applauded Comptroller Liu for taking a bold action, for trying something different. I mean, in very tough fiscal times. I think that, he's to be applauded for this initiative. And as I said, it is something new and bold that he's put on the table. And in fact, it's something that New York City hasn't seen before. I still think that at the same point, while I have been supportive and applauded, I still think that, right now there's still other details that are forthcoming. So I think that in the long run, I support it and applaud it. I think in concept, it's a great thing. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the additional details, but I think that Comptroller Liu, should be applauded for taking this strong action.
Well, I understand you applaud him. On my side of the table, where I sit, I'm confused because I'm waiting to see the details, any details. Hello, John, if you're listening, Greg Floyd, trustee, I have not seen any details yet. As former controller, how do you think the city's doing in these tough financial times?
Well, I think it's, it is still kind of a mixed results. We've seen ups and downs on Wall Street, and that's a big part of New York City. Real estate has held value in New York City better than it has in many other places at the same point. While we've seen perhaps a stronger economy in New York City than we have in so many other places around the rest of the country, I think that there are too many, working New Yorkers, too many poor New Yorkers, too many middle-class New Yorkers who are suffering. We watched, foreclosures rise in New York during the fiscal collapse, centered in certain neighborhoods. So if you looked at central Brooklyn, if you looked at southeast Queens, parts of the Bronx, Staten Island, it had a greater impact in mortgage foreclosures there than it did in other parts of the city. We're still looking at, way too many people who are unemployed in New York City, African American, Latino, people who have, who want to work but haven't had the opportunity to get a job. So I think that, we didn't suffer, we didn't have as much of a decline as the rest of the country did. However, it's not to say that New York hasn't had its problems. New York is showing a stronger economy than so many other places, but we still have a long, long way to go.
Well, job creation seems to be the main focus these days. What are some of your suggestions for job creation?
Look, I think that, there are a lot of things. First, it is to understand where we've seen growth over a period of time. And this is one of those instances, the mayor's proposal to kind of grow a new tech industry in the city of New York. I give the mayor high marks for that. I think that makes a lot of sense. In that whole competition that has seen Cornell come out ahead, there were other proposals also. Some ones that will provide thousands of jobs for the city of New York. I think we ought to move forward on some of those other proposals also. But where you've seen growth in the city of New York in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, rise of those who are self-employed, individuals, freelancers, if you will, in so many other ways, that's a great opportunity and growth area for us. We should be working on incubators and so many other things to help grow that. Ideas to be able to help put those people together in different places as a city, and then perhaps create opportunities for them to do business with the city of New York. I think that when it comes to small businesses also, the city talks a good game, but I don't think they've supported small businesses any way or in any fashion that they really should have. And I think that New York City needs to go a long way to help grow small businesses And those small businesses operate all across the city of New York in all 5 boroughs. We need to create the focus there. So I see growth areas in the city of New York, sure, in the tech sector and in others, but in small businesses and those with self-employed. And we need to create a lot of focus in those areas. So I think, New York has weathered a fiscal storm better than so many other places. It isn't to say that we didn't lose tens of thousands of jobs also, but as we look to the future, there are things that we need to do better. And I think that in looking at those who are self-employed, making adjustments and changes there to better benefit them, looking at small businesses, and the city looks at small businesses, almost in fines and fees and penalties, way to make money. We need to look at them as jobs, and people who get those jobs are going to be paying taxes. So those are some of the growth possibilities. And then just, I'd like to see New York City do more business with those who have businesses in New York. We don't do that. And, whether it's a local preference or looking for ways to grow that, we need to do that. Last but not least, let's take a real page out of the state. If you look at Governor Cuomo these days, he's trying to grow and support minority businesses and women-owned businesses. New York City has talked that game for years, but hasn't done it. And I think that if we're going to really grow a job base, we want to do it and help grow minority businesses. The state of New York has set a goal that the governor had put forward in his first State of the State of 20%. New York City needs to take note and understand that's a way to good business and a way to job growth also. We need to look in New York City, and New York City government needs to look to set a goal for itself of if it's 20%, that's what, that the state's doing, how can New York City do less? So I think that those are so many areas. If we want to grow a job base across the city of New York, those are ways that we can do it.
Now, there's been so many attacks on labor these days, whether the pension systems are under attack, that the public employees' pensions cost too much, or if we got rid of all the public employees, we would solve our budget problems throughout this nation, especially what was going on in Wisconsin. What do you think about the attacks on labor? Because I know you received a lot of labor support, and being the former controller, you understand economics better than the average person.
I've been astonished over a period of time that across the country, it has become, first it was, okay, Wall Street got us into this mess, and we're angry at Wall Street. And that was anger that, I'm not going to scapegoat Wall Street. Wall Street is important to New York City. At the same point, they helped to create the fiscal mess that surrounded us. All of a sudden, a year later, 18 months later, it became labor, and somehow organized labor across the country got us into this mess. I'm still trying to figure out how that happened and why labor is being blamed. I think we are in tough times, and I think in tough times, people want to blame someone. I think blaming labor is misplaced. I think we are in a very different phase, though, and a period of time where we have to work together to come up with creative solutions. That's one of the things that we have to do during this period of time. You go back and you remember organized labor in New York City as an example. They helped to bail the city out and keep us out of bankruptcy back in the mid-1970s. That was an opportunity of people working together with creative solutions. We need to do that now. Are pension costs difficult right now? Absolutely. Do we have to do something about it? Yes, we do.
That's right.
But we're not going to be able to do that by pointing fingers and beating each other up. This is one of those, somebody would say to me, do we need a new tier? I could say yes, but you know something? I'm not going to do that and have that public discussion. That's a discussion that hopefully I'll be able to have with union leadership and union leaders like yourself and others and say, look, here's the problem that we have right now. We have to be creative and smart and work together and come up with solutions. That's what we have to do. That's the time that we're in right now, that you can't ignore the problems. You can't make believe by sticking your head in the sand that they're going to go away. But at the same point, I'm not going to stand there and point fingers during these tough times. We need to work together. It is as simple as that.
You've been listening to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd. Our very special guest was Bill Thompson, former New York City Comptroller and candidate for mayor of New York City 2013.